Tonight on Primetime, as Armenia prepares to vote, questions about peace, security and the country's regional direction are increasingly shaping the political conversation. The election then that will define Armenia's future. Good evening. Armenia's election campaign is entering its final stretch. The vote could also offer a clearer indication of how the country sees its future relationship with Azerbaijan and the wider region.
With Armenia's parliamentary elections just days away, attention is focusing not only on domestic issues but also on the country's relationship with neighbouring Azerbaijan. Several international analysts and media outlets have highlighted the issue in recent weeks. Writing in Forbes, Russian political analyst Sergei Markadonov argued that regional dynamics have shifted in Azerbaijan's favor following recent developments in the South Caucasus. Italy's Ore 12 publication said Armenia currently lacks a clear military guarantor, pointing to the limited role of international security mechanisms in the region. Meanwhile, Romania's Cotidianul newspaper linked the election campaign directly to the unfinished peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The publication noted that a final peace agreement has yet to be signed and said constitutional reform remains a point of discussion between the two sides. The debate has also featured prominently inside Armenia. Opposition figures have accused Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's government of making excessive concessions to Baku, while supporters of normalization argue that a lasting peace agreement could bring greater stability and economic opportunities. As campaigning enters its final stage, the future of Armenia's relationship with Azerbaijan is emerging as one of the key issues influencing political debate ahead of the June 7th vote.
The separatist administration that once operated in Karabakh ceased to exist after Azerbaijan restored full control of the region in 2023. Yet some of its former representatives continue to receive support and international platforms promoting questions about why the issue remains active abroad despite the realities on the ground having fundamentally changed.
The self-proclaimed separatist administration that once operated in Karabakh formally ceased to exist following Azerbaijan's restoration of sovereignty over the region in 2023. Armenia has since recognized Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, while peace talks between the two countries continue. Despite that, former representatives of the separatist regime have remained politically active abroad, with support from organizations and political figures in several countries. In April, delegations linked to the former regime travelled to France. They held meetings with local officials, parliamentarians and diaspora organisations in Paris and Alfortville. During those discussions, they promoted calls for the return of Karabakh Armenians under international guarantees and raised the issue of ethnic Armenian detainees held in Azerbaijan. France remains one of the few countries where a so-called representation linked to the former separatist administration continues to operate. Switzerland has also hosted former representatives of the dissolved regime. During a visit in late April and early May, they attended events in the Swiss Parliament and met lawmakers and civil society representatives. Similar issues were raised during those discussions. Russia has provided another platform. Former representatives participated in public events in Moscow and Yerevan in May, while Russian media outlets continued to feature Karabakh-related narratives. One television report describing Karabakh as a separate region was later withdrawn after objections from Azerbaijan's foreign ministry. Azerbaijani officials argue that such initiatives attempt to preserve separatist narratives after the conflict has ended and the former regime has been dissolved. They say support from foreign political groups and organizations risks complicating regional normalization efforts at a time when Baku and Yerevan are working towards a peace agreement.
Well, joining me now is Anastasia Lavrina, host, of course, of Inside Politics and Frontline here on A News. Anastasia, great to see you. Good to have you with us in the studio. Let's start with the big picture then. So many countries around the world now are paying attention to this election in Armenia, aren't they?
Absolutely. But most of all, I guess, the countries in the region who are following the agenda and willing to know the results after the elections, which will take place on June 7th, because the results of these elections will have much more consequences that probably some may think about. So there is a real message now Armenia is sending to, and all the candidates are sending, about the future course this country may follow, depending on the results. From the official statements of the Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, he's willing to keep the balance between the Moscow and European Union, willing also to continue to follow their relations with the United States. So he is in support of the balanced approach and the development of multi-balanced relations with the countries in the region, which is, of course, not in favor of the policy which Moscow have and the interest Moscow has in the region. And from the official statements of the officials in the Russian Federation, it becomes clear that Russia is not willing to agree if Armenia have more pro-Western orientation and pro-European Union course. So they are pushing Nikol Pashinyan or the government of Armenia, who will be there, to choose only one direction, to have more pro-Russian orientation, be a member of the Eurasian Economic Union and CSTO, where the membership of Armenia now is being frozen, or it should be more pro-Western oriented, meaning that it has to stop all of its membership in the organization, which is in full control of the Russian Federation. So in case of the winner of the other candidates, we already heard these statements. They have more pro-Russian orientation, and they are not that much, let's say, willing to see the peaceful developments in the region. So the countries like Azerbaijan, Turkey, and let's say Georgia, the results of the elections in Armenia may have the consequences for the peaceful process with Turkey and Azerbaijan, and for the future development of the economic and energy projects in the region.
And if Nikol Pashinyan does win, Anastasia, what message do you think that sends to to Armenia's partners, including Azerbaijan, and other actors around the region?
In my understanding, if he wins, it will demonstrate the full support he has among his own population, and that's the most important part, meaning that the policy he is following now, having that diversified foreign policy and less dependence on only the cooperation with the Russian Federation, is being fully supported by the own population. Moreover, the course which he already mentioned many times in his speech on the peaceful coexistence with Azerbaijan and Turkey, to work on the comprehensive peace agreement to be signed in the upcoming months, hopefully, to have good and stable relations, cooperation with the countries like the United States and other European Union member states. Meaning that he will continue following all of this orientation, and he has the full support of his own population. And I will also say that it will confirm once again that all of those directions he has already chosen, specifically a strategic partnership agreement signed with the United States, the realization of the projects like TRIP, then the economic integration and cooperation with Azerbaijan and Turkey. By the way, just recently we read the news that for the first time within 3 decades, the first bus from Armenia to Turkish cars easily cross the border for the first time within 3 decades. That's indeed a great achievement. And if you remember, many times Azerbaijani side and Turkish side was mentioning that for Armenia, the importance to turn the page of the war and to have stable relations with the bordering countries, that's a must politics to be realized, and it will indeed benefit the population and the Armenian government itself. And we see now that Nikol Pashinyan is implementing this process. In case of his winnery, in case of his party will get more seats in the parliament, that's a full support of his own population and the continuation of the course he has already started to follow.
So that trend of openness, of partnership, of tolerance, of trade too, that's a trend that you expect to accelerate and continue if we see a Pashinyan victory?
Absolutely. He has already been working on this specifically more since August 8th last year, when there was a trilateral meeting held in Washington together with the President Ilham Aliyev and President of the United States Donald Trump. So since that time you could see some changes in the Armenian policy, specifically from what is being done and from the official statement. The Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan is mostly concentrated on this more independent development of his government. Of course, he will again face some challenges, specifically in its relations with the Russian Federation. I am more than sure that Russia will insist on the Armenia to make a choice whether it's still willing to be a member of the European Union or member of the Eurasian Economic Union, and if Armenia is willing to unfreeze its membership in the CSTO, or it will still purchase buying the military equipment from the Western and NATO countries. Specifically, I want to mention France here. From the official position, it will take time, of course, and it will also require some more efforts by the government in Armenia to work more on the formation of the independent policy. It will take time. We cannot ignore the fact that there is still military base, Russian military base in Armenia, and economic integration. Armenian economy depends on the cooperation with the Russian Federation as for today. But also the news I read today, Ursula von der Leyen, in her post in the social media and in the official media network, it will say that the European Union is willing to support Armenia in its policy of diversification, meaning that those economic challenges it may face due to the restrictions Russian Federation is putting on Armenian products can be compensated by the money which is being provided by the European Union itself. It sounds good, but such a, let's say, reliance and dependence on the support from outside not always have good consequences. Armenia should work more intensively to have more independent economy, more developed economy, more integrated economy, specifically in the region with the full operation of the transport and energy routes. It may, let's say, diminish its dependence on the external actors. Indeed, even now, Azerbaijan is sending fuels to Armenia, and some more cargo is being transported through the territory of Azerbaijan to Armenia. So it's also very helpful. I want to bring those statements made by Nikol Pashinyan just recently, when he said without Azerbaijan, the consequences for Armenia because of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz will be catastrophic. So Azerbaijan indeed helps Armenia a lot, and these developments and this smooth operation for the future, the TRIP project, which is or Zangezur corridor, as a very valuable part of the middle corridor, gives an opportunity for Armenia to become the country which will have a role of hub in the region and also benefit from the cargo which will pass through this middle corridor, which is indeed have a great relevance for all countries in the region, Central Asia, China, and even the United States. So here is where the future of Armenia will be developed, whether this country still want to be dependent on any external actor from Europe, from Russia, or from somewhere else, or Armenia is willing to work closely with the regional partners on the development and integration into the economic independence system.
Anastasia, we mentioned that the whole world now is increasingly interested in the results of this election. When you think about some of the big sort of global leaders, some of the big regional leaders, what do you think will be going through their mind? What will they be looking for when they wake up on the morning after the election?
The number of seats in the parliament the current government may have after the results of the election. I guess this is number one they will be following, and then knowing the results of these elections, they will of course follow the official statements made by the government in Armenia, whether it will be Nikol Pashinyan's government or someone else, what kind of statements that person will be making the first day after the elections, when the results will be known for the Armenian population and for the global audience as well. Also, I guess it will be very interesting to know the reaction of the population in Armenia itself, whether there will be any demonstrations, meetings in the streets, or there will be quite a calm situation when the results will be immediately accepted by everyone without those who may be dissatisfied by the results. The reaction of such countries like the Russian Federation, the United States is also very interesting. But in case of the winner of Nikol Pashinyan, of course, I mean, his political party, we should expect more tough statements to be made in Moscow. If I'm not mistaken, from the official sources, I also read that there is a planned meeting to take in the end of this year to decide whether Armenia still can be a member of the Eurasian Economic Union or it has to leave. Even if Armenia is willing to be part of that union for the future, understanding the importance it's for its own economy, I guess in Moscow there will be tough pressure for Nikol Pashinyan, if he stays in power, to keep his country, meaning that following the rules it had before, or to have, let's say, to stop any cooperation within this economic union and have more pro-European integration.
Anastasia, we know you will be an essential part of our coverage on this topic in the coming days. For now, though, we thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at whether the latest Israel-Lebanon ceasefire can hold, despite Hezbollah rejecting key parts of the agreement. Don't go away.
As the operator's regional president, how proud are you for getting this milestone?
Very proud to see non-associated gas finally entering the operations phase of ACG infrastructure. In Azerbaijan, we have a very business-friendly environment.
Do you have any estimates of the real potential at the scale?
The non-associated gas volume could be anything between 4 and 6 trillion cubic feet of gas.
Whether BP is only trying to protect its positions in Azerbaijan or preparing for a future role.
Vision is to establish Azerbaijan and the wider region as a world-class energy hub.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Well, after months of cross-border violence and repeated warnings of a wider conflict, Israel and Lebanon appear to have another opportunity to step back from the brink. The question now is whether this latest ceasefire can survive where previous efforts have struggled.
The United States has announced that Israel and Lebanon have agreed to implement a ceasefire. The US State Department said the agreement is contingent on a complete halt to attacks by the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah, along with several other conditions.
Of Lebanon and Israel.
The agreement comes after Israeli strikes killed at least 9 people in southern Lebanon on Wednesday. Hezbollah also fired rockets into northern Israel, putting a fragile truce agreed in April under pressure. According to the agreement, Hezbollah operatives must leave the area between the Litani River and the Israeli border that is currently under Israeli control in southern Lebanon. Israel's ambassador to the United States, Yechiel Leiter, said he was confident the ceasefire would hold, describing it as a chance to break decades of recurring violence along the border.
Hezbollah is going to understand that there is now an agreement between Israel and Lebanon, backed by the United States. The pilot zone project will be guided by the United States. Special units in the Lebanese army will take control of various areas and gradually spread out throughout the south, so we don't go into another pattern where Israel leaves, Hezbollah comes back, and we go through the same thing for the past 40 years. We are no longer going into a pattern of negotiating ceasefires where Israel leaves, Hezbollah comes back, and we go back to the same nonsense. This is stopped. Everybody understands it has to stop. And we are full of hope that this time it will succeed.
A member of Hezbollah's political council, Mahmoud Kamati, told the BBC that the group does not recognise the Washington talks and would not be bound by their decisions. Meanwhile, the State Department said all parties agreed that the future relationship between Israel and Lebanon must be decided by the two sovereign governments, rejecting outside interference. Israel and Lebanon are due to meet again on June 22nd for further talks aimed at reaching a comprehensive agreement. Despite the announcement, tensions remain high. Israel's military said it intercepted a drone and 2 projectiles crossing the border, while Hezbollah said it had targeted a gathering of Israeli troops. Before the deal was announced, Israeli leaders warned they would resume strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs if attacks on northern Israel continued.
Well, joining me now from Istanbul is Dr. Norhan El-Baya. Dr. El-Baya, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Let me start with some of the sort of hard fundamentals of this. I mean, of course, everybody wants a deal to happen, but the US says there's a ceasefire. At the same time, Hezbollah says it doesn't recognize the talks. I mean, it's hard to deduce that these talks are meaningful, isn't it?
Indeed, because if you decided to look at it from political perspective, it's significant, definitely. But from operational perspective, it's very fragile. The value of the ceasefire agreement lies in that the two states, I mean here, Lebanon and Israel, finally and for the first time, they sat together on one table and they accepted the framework, or let's call it the US or American framework of de-escalation of the current conflict. But here, Hezbollah, on the other side, publicly rejected all conditions and terms mentioned in that agreement. So here, we shouldn't call it agreement or guaranteed cessation of violence, rather than it's more diplomatic openness. So this is, I think, the right frame that we have to use it in this situation.
And one of the things that obviously the parties are trying to do here is change fundamental behaviour, which is so difficult, isn't it? I mean, the deal seems to depend on Hezbollah changing its behaviour, yet Hezbollah says it won't be bound by the talks. I mean, I guess that exposes the agreement's biggest weakness, doesn't it?
This is actually the core issue in the whole situation. As I just mentioned, Hezbollah General Secretary Naim Qassem publicly today morning, he rejected all terms. Let me just mention the 3 important terms. Number 1, withdrawal or Hezbollah's fighters withdrawal from southern of Lebanon, particularly south of Al-Litani River. Also to halt all attacks from Hezbollah side, here we are talking, plus establishing what they call it pilot zones or security zones controlled by Lebanese armed forces. Hezbollah rejected all those 3 conditions publicly, and this is the core issue here. Let me just mention something. The challenge here is that these negotiations conducted by 2 states, and it addresses security security issues done by non-government armed group. Here we are talking about Hezbollah. At the same time, Hezbollah was not involved in the negotiation. So whatever mistakes will happen, it will be a responsibility of the Lebanese government. So here, this is, and historically, Lebanese government failed to succeed in dealing with Hezbollah since 1985.
Yes, indeed. I mean, Donald Trump also has reportedly urged Benjamin Netanyahu to avoid further escalation, applied some pressure clearly there. How important was this US pressure on Israel in getting the two sides to the point that they're at today?
We cannot rely the impact of America in this situation. It's huge. And Lebanese people, they are seeing this as something very, very big and very huge. Here, we have to mention that America is one of the few actors has still a very big influence on Israel, particularly on Benjamin Netanyahu. At the same time, they still maintaining, here I'm talking still about Americans, they are still maintaining channels with Lebanese government and also with other regional stakeholders. So that's why they succeeded actually to put that pressure and to push further for this framework, American framework or agreement or even draft, ceasefire draft.
When you look at this draft, this agreement, who comes out of it in the strongest position politically, do you think? Is it Israel? Is it Lebanon? Is it Hezbollah? Or is it the United States?
This is a very significant question. I can clearly say that United States is the biggest beneficiary, or let me say it in different words, the immediate political beneficiary in this situation because of the pressure that they put. And to be honest, they succeeded. Even if this agreement is kind of not solid, but we cannot deny that, yes, United States succeeded to create this framework and to bring those two states together to sit on the same table. So in the first place, United States definitely. Second place, definitely I can say Israel, because Israel succeeded to put their own terms, which is halting attacks from Hezbollah's side, also creating pilot zones here and withdrawals of Hezbollah fighters from southern of Al-Litani River. Those 3 points will serve their security objectives. And the third place, the Lebanese government, because Lebanese government can reinforce their strength again, to bring back their strength again, to control and to put their authority by the expansion of the Lebanese armed forces in southern of Lebanon. But when we talk about the position of Hezbollah, it will be very, very complicated because they rejected everything mentioned in this agreement or in this draft, because they didn't want to appear or to show themselves to their supporters, especially from Shiite community in Lebanon. Only they wanted to show themselves as resistance movement. That's it, as always and as usual since 1985.
Well, with all that in mind, we've seen ceasefires come and go before, haven't we? What has to happen over the coming weeks for this one, unlike all the others, to actually last?
For this agreement to last, it will be very challenging and very complicated. It needs actually 2 things. It needs commitment from both sides here. I'm talking about Israel and Hezbollah to halt all attacks across borders going to northern of Israel, or others going to attacking southern of Lebanon. So commitment of halting attacks from both sides to maintain the sustained ceasefire. This is very important. The second important thing is the security procedures that will done by the Lebanese armed forces in the southern of Al-Litani River. This area that they called pilot zones or security zones from Al-Litani River till the northern border of Israel, this will be supposed to be, as per the draft, under the control of the Lebanese armed forces. So they supposed to be here, the Lebanese government supposed to take the most appropriate or suited procedures and mechanisms that can maintain this ceasefire to be sustained.
Dr. El-Baya, we thank you very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate your analysis. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories shaping the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome out, you're watching Primetime. Now, Katie Wilson is here with the very latest business news stories. Katie, what have you got on your agenda this evening?
So there's the latest update from Wall Street, new innovations in AI which could impact the way we work, and a big gamble in the entertainment industry. So, first this evening, Wall Street stepped back from record highs as rising tensions in the Middle East and a jump in oil prices reignited concerns about inflation. Investors took the opportunity to lock in profits, sending major US indexes lower despite strength in energy stocks.
Wall Street's main indexes tumbled on Wednesday, with the Dow losing about 1.2%, the S&P 500 shedding about 0.75%, and the Nasdaq falling roughly 0.9%. Flaring tensions in the Middle East and rising crude prices stoked inflation jitters and convinced investors to take some profits. Energy stocks, buoyed by oil prices, enjoyed the largest percentage gains, with ExxonMobil and Chevron both closing higher. Meanwhile, 6 of the Magnificent Seven group of mega-cap tech stocks ended lower, with Meta the only exception. Liz Miller is founder and president of Summit Place Financial Advisors.
I more and more just keep seeing this market as a ping pong. One day we've got the momentum leading tech stocks up, and then that drives all the indices up. And the next day, we've got sort of the second tier undervalued companies up and the index is down. Today's again one of those days where we're seeing energy with the most strength. We're seeing some of the consumer come through, some of the industrial, but techs are marginally down. And that's what I mean when I think about this market as a ping pong market, because these are high quality companies. They're large cap. They would be top tier fundamentally, but they haven't really participated as much in the index strength.
Among individual movers, shares of GameStop jumped 6% after the original meme stock posted a rise in quarterly revenue and unveiled a $2 billion share buyback program. Shares of CrowdStrike, down nearly 3% at the close, dropped about another 10% in extended trading after the cybersecurity company reported a 15% jump in its first quarter operating expenses as it ramps up investments in AI and product development. And shares of Broadcom fell more than 6% in extended trading, despite the company forecasting third quarter revenue above Wall Street expectations, betting on robust demand for its custom AI chips and networking gear.
Well, after that shaky day on Wall Street, attention is now turning to one of the most anticipated stock market debuts in history. SpaceX has broken with convention by setting an IPO price a week before its market debut, as Elon Musk looks to raise a record $75 billion.
SpaceX publicly set a $135 price for shares in its initial public offering on Wednesday. The announcement comes a week ahead of its landmark listing and upends Wall Street norms. Firms don't normally commit to a figure until a day before their market debut. Now, the rocket maker's decision to publish a price early has few, if any, precedents among major U.S. IPOs and underscores Elon Musk's determination to raise record sums his way. SpaceX's amended IPO filing confirms a Reuters report from earlier this week. The company is aiming to raise $75 billion, the most ever for an IPO, in a deal that would value it at $1.75 trillion. SpaceX will now kick off an investor roadshow on Thursday, with trading on the Nasdaq set to begin on June 12th. Summit Place Financial Advisors Chief Liz Miller says the upcoming offering, along with that of AI pioneer Anthropic, could change the rules of the IPO market.
We've had a very dead IPO market for a while, so there hasn't been a regular flow to be looking at how markets look at this, how institutional investors look at it. But the other thing that's really different about today's IPOs is so many of them have really deep and broad private investment behind them. It used to be a company came to the markets first. There wasn't much private investment. There was a desire for capital. Now these companies seem to be coming to the market to really monetize waves of investors before them.
The SpaceX IPO may also be unusual in how many shares are allocated to individual investors. Reuters has reported that Musk could set aside 30% of the offering for them, far more than is usual. That's likely to be aimed at capitalizing on his cult-like following among some investors.
Signs of strain are emerging in the retail sector as shares of Gap and American Eagle slumped after both companies issued disappointing outlooks, suggesting consumers are becoming more cautious about spending on non-essential items.
Shares of Gap and American Eagle each plummeted on Friday after both retailers issued weak sales forecasts, signaling deepening pressure on consumer discretionary spending. Gap, which is in the midst of a turnaround, cut its sales forecast, while American Eagle kept its forecast intact but cautioned about near-term gross margins. Shares of Gap tumbled as much as 18% in morning trading, while American Eagle fell nearly 19%. Some analysts said the key swing factor pressuring sales at Gap was its Old Navy chain, where seasonal women's apparel, including dresses, failed to connect with shoppers. Some women's apparel at American Eagle also faced challenges, despite strength at the company's Aerie sub-brand. American Eagle recently launched another ad campaign with actor Sydney Sweeney to attract Gen Z shoppers, a year after a viral and controversial ad featuring Sweeney fueled a stock rally. But analysts at Barclays cautioned that repeating last year's success may be difficult, even as the company continues to spend on marketing in the current quarter. The results at both retailers underscore a widening split in consumer spending, with record low sentiment driven by the Iran war forcing lower-income households to cut back amid higher gas prices. Higher-income shoppers, however, remain selectively willing to treat themselves to certain clothing or beauty items. Earlier this week, Abercrombie & Fitch and Bath & Body Works posted strong quarterly results, indicating continued appetite for those affordable indulgences.
To artificial intelligence now, and the race to commercialize is intensifying. Meta is making its latest move into the enterprise AI market with a new digital assistant designed to help businesses automate everyday tasks, from scheduling appointments to closing sales.
Shares of Meta rose more than 3% in morning trading on Wednesday after the social media giant unveiled an AI agent designed to help businesses carry out day-to-day operations. The move marks Meta's latest push into the fast-growing enterprise AI market. Mark Zuckerberg's company said the new product expands on existing business messaging services by enabling agentic capabilities, in which the assistant can, for example, book calendar appointments and close sales on behalf of businesses. It said more than 1 million businesses were already using earlier chatbot versions of such agents on WhatsApp and Messenger. The new version will be added to Instagram as well. The move hints at Meta's ambitions to compete with rivals like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google in the market for enterprise applications of its AI tools, leveraging the reach of its WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook apps. The company is also launching a broader business agent platform aimed at giving businesses the tools to build custom AI agents to help them manage their operations elsewhere. That platform is connected to hundreds of non-Meta systems, including Shopify.
Well, sticking with AI, NVIDIA is betting the next big leap won't happen in the cloud, but on your desk. The chipmaker has unveiled a new processor designed to bring advanced AI capabilities directly to personal computers. Let's take a look.
NVIDIA unveiled a major new chip in Taiwan on Monday. The RTX Spark PC chip brings AI capabilities directly into laptops and desktop computers. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang spoke at the Computex conference in Taiwan about the firm's latest innovation.
There is no question this reinvention of the computer is as big of a deal as the reinvention of the phone into what we now know as the smartphone. And so this is the beginning of that journey.
He added it's part of NVIDIA's effort with Microsoft to reinvent the PC for the AI era after 3 years of collaboration between the firms. The chip is designed to run AI agents locally rather than solely rely on cloud computing, and it's due to be delivered this fall. Some analysts believe it could transform how users engage with AI. One market watcher told Reuters the chip aims to transform traditional app-centric PCs into agnetic AI personal computers. Huang also showed off NVIDIA's new Vera Central Processing Unit, or CPU, at Computex. It's designed for AI agents, and early adopters include OpenAI, Anthropic, and SpaceX.
This is going to be our new major growth driver. The reviews are already coming out, and it's pretty good.
Huang said last month the new Vera CPUs gives the firm access to a new $200 billion market. Leaders of some of the world's largest technology companies are heading to Computex. The trade show runs from June 2nd to June 5th.
And finally, a high-stakes bet in the world of casinos and entertainment. Media mogul Barry Diller is looking to expand his gaming empire, with his company proposing an $18 billion takeover of MGM Resorts, in what would be one of the biggest deals in the sector this year.
Barry Diller is hoping to get lucky with the casino business. His digital media company, People Inc., said on Monday it has proposed to buy MGM Resorts for $18 billion. MGM Resorts owns several properties on the Las Vegas Strip, in Macau, and online site BetMGM. The offer comes after Diller, who is People's chairman, told shareholders in a letter 5 weeks ago that People would sharpen its focus on its MGM stake, calling the stock wildly undervalued. People currently owns about 26% of MGM Resorts, whose stock rose as much as 15% Monday morning, while People climbed as much as 3% initially before dropping 2%. MGM Resorts did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. Diller's interest in MGM dates back to the COVID-19 pandemic, when he began accumulating shares in the casino operator when its shares were battered by closures and travel restrictions. The offer marks another major takeover attempt in the casino sector. Last week, hospitality billionaire Tilman Fertitta's firm announced the takeover of Caesars Entertainment in a nearly $18 billion deal.
That's this evening's Business News Roundup. Back to you, Guy.
Great stuff, Katie. Thank you so much, as always. Okay. After the break, we'll take a look at Zelensky's call for direct talks with Putin as long-range strikes intensify on both sides. Don't go away.
As the operator's regional president, how proud are you for getting this milestone?
Very proud to see non-associated gas finally entering the operations phase of ACG infrastructure. In Azerbaijan, we have a very business-friendly environment.
Do you have any estimates of the real potential at the scale?
That the non-associated gas volume could be anything between 4 and 6 trillion cubic feet of gas.
Whether BP is only trying to protect its positions in Azerbaijan or preparing for a future role.
Vision is to establish Azerbaijan and the wider region as a world-class energy hub.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Now, military pressure is intensifying on both sides of the war in Ukraine. But as Russia and Ukraine exchange a new wave of long-range strikes, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he's ready to meet Vladimir Putin immediately in an effort to bring the conflict to an end.
Fresh attacks have been reported by both Russia and Ukraine, with each side claiming strikes on strategic military and energy-related targets. Russia's defense ministry says its forces hit Ukrainian drone facilities, energy infrastructure and troop positions, while air defense units intercepted more than 700 drones along with several Western-supplied weapons. Meanwhile, Ukraine says it carried out strikes against key Russian facilities, including port infrastructure, an oil terminal in St. Petersburg, and a factory linked to the production of precision-guided weapons. The latest exchange highlights the growing reach of long-range attacks, with both sides increasingly targeting sites far from the front lines. Amid the escalation, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has renewed his call for direct talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Zelenskyy said he is ready for an immediate meeting, arguing that leader-to-leader dialogue could help accelerate efforts to end the war. He also stressed that Ukraine would not wait for progress on other international issues before pursuing negotiations aimed at bringing the conflict to a close. The developments come at a time when military pressure and diplomatic efforts continue to unfold in parallel, with no sign yet of a breakthrough in the more than 3-year-long war.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says a decision could be imminent on $400 million in Ukraine funding that was approved by Congress but has been held up at the Pentagon. Well, speaking on Capitol Hill, Rubio also warned that the risk of further escalation between Russia and Ukraine is increasing.
And there were a couple of stops along the way that unfortunately got tied up a little bit. But I've seen it not as Secretary of State. I've seen the interagency as National Security Advisor. And it's something that I think we'll have news on fairly.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Kyiv on Wednesday for an unannounced trip. During the visit, Rutte held talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy before paying tribute to fallen soldiers at Kyiv's Wall of Remembrance. Zelenskyy said Ukraine's growing number of strikes inside Russia was strengthening Kyiv's position ahead of any future negotiations, while Rutte praised Ukraine's increasing military effectiveness and its impact on Russian forces.
And let me also wanted to talk. Ukraine is now so successful that Putin is only able to organize a 9th of May parade with an official presidential decree by this president. So this is basically how far you got. And I think for 2 hours you allowed him to do it, and to then end it in 1 hour 55 minutes. So he did it.
Well, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Maria Ulvianowska, correspondent with Independence Avenue Media. Maria, thanks very much indeed for being with us. Good to see you on Primetime. President Zelenskyy then, he says he's ready to meet Vladimir Putin. He's ready to do it immediately. How significant is that statement, and how is it being received in Ukraine?
Thank you for having me. This statement from Zelenskyy is not new. He has been saying that he's ready to meet Vladimir Putin for quite some time now. This time around, though, this signals a couple things. So first of all, it reinforces that Ukraine is not the party that is blocking negotiations. He shows that Ukraine is ready to proceed, and he also puts the ball in Putin's court. He makes Putin to start and making some movements into this direction. It also raises pressure on Kremlin. It requires decisions from Putin himself, and Zelensky's argument is essentially if Putin truly wants peace, he has to act on it and show with real actions what he's ready for this, and he has to meet Zelenskyy face to face. It also comes from a position of somewhat greater confidence with this recent long-range attacks that Ukrainians did deep inside Russian territory on their oil refineries. Ukraine seized the momentum to pressure Russia into negotiations, to move them closer to the position of being able to compromise on some things. And so this all comes at a time where there is a chance to reignite these negotiations that have, frankly, been not so successful for the past year. If you go to the reactions of Ukrainians, of course, support these negotiations. Ukrainians are exhausted of the 4 years of this full-scale war on their territory, but there is also deep skepticism towards whether Putin's actions are real, whether his intentions to end this war are real, what, if anything, these negotiations could possibly achieve, because we know that coming from Russia, there are statements that Putin will only meet Zelenskyy to finalize the agreement, not to negotiate. There's also a question of where this meeting can take place. Ukraine said that it's ready to meet Putin anywhere but in Russia, the country that has conducted this aggression and also is notorious for killing its adversaries, and apart from Belarus, that is also complicit in the war of aggression.
I think, Maria, a lot of people watching might find this quite strange, that there are these calls for the end of the war, calls to have meetings, but at the same time we're seeing both sides carrying out these increasingly ambitious long-range strikes. What does that tell us about where the war stands today?
I would be very careful in saying both sides because this is not this is a war of aggression. There is an obvious aggressor, Russia, and there is a victim of aggression, Ukraine. And by killing Ukrainians, by starting this war, Russia has earned the right to be targeted by Ukrainians at any given time to protect Ukraine. And it's also important to define here that the goals of these attacks are very different. So while unable to achieve battlefield victories, Russia is trying to do everything possible to terrorize Ukrainian civilians, to kill them, to submit them to surrender, and to make life in Ukraine unbearable, unlivable. Whether Ukrainians on their side are trying to stop Russia, and they have already stopped Russia from conquering Ukraine within 3 days, as Russia wanted to do in the first place. Now, according to the State Department, Ukrainians are killing more Russian soldiers that Russia can mobilize every month. And they've developed their own long-range missiles that target these oil refineries deep inside of Russia to stop the Russian military machine from continuing this war. And so there is no equalizing of the aggressor and the victim. Russia can stop this war at any given day. And this is, if we are talking about this long-range attacks that Ukrainians are doing. This has to do also with the negotiating leverage. Ukraine is trying to show that it is in the position of strength, that it can inflict pain on Russia and make Russia come to the negotiation table, make Russia surrender some of its high demands that Russia, by the way, has not taken off the table. And Russia is sending the opposite message, is saying that it can continue inflict damage on Ukrainian civilians regardless of Western support levels, as long as it takes, as long as someone actually stops Russia.
Okay, and now Marco Rubio says movement is expected on this delayed US funding for Ukraine. He's also warning about the risk of escalation. How is that being viewed in Kyiv?
Well, that's a great question, and I will ask you a different question. What does movement actually mean? Does it mean weapon deliveries? Does it mean appropriating funds? Does it mean simply continued discussions and optimism? I think Ukrainians have learned to become very cautious about these optimistic statements coming from the US and whether they will actually translate into concrete aid packages. And Ukrainians will believe it when they see it. I also want to say that Secretary Marco Rubio also said that Ukraine's deep strike campaign inside of Russia is proving how increasingly effective it can be. And he says that at the current pace, the war, Russia may never achieve military goals it is demanding at the negotiating table. And at the same time, he stresses that the war can only be ended through diplomacy. So there are a couple angles here. Russia can only be pressured into negotiations because it doesn't want to negotiate in good faith, and we have seen that over the past year with negotiations coming to no end, no fruitful solutions. And in order to pressure Russia, Ukraine, of course, is waiting for partners to do something to impose more sanctions, especially on the side of the US. But Ukraine is also doing something itself, and these strikes deep inside the Russian oil refineries is the way to pressure Russia to the negotiating table.
Maria, we know, as you said, that Russia started this war. We all know how it happened. The world is well aware of Russia's tactics and what's taken place so far in Ukraine. Nevertheless, though, Ukraine argues that strikes inside Russia now strengthen its negotiating position, doesn't it? But don't you think, despite all that Russia has done, that doing that still just risks making a diplomatic breakthrough. It makes it slightly harder to achieve.
We have tried over the past year, with the help of the United States, a completely different tactics. So the negotiation tactics with the help of the United States that the United States have mediated was to appease Russia, to bring Russia to the negotiating table without calling Russia an aggressor, without putting much pressure onto Russia, being nice to Russia, essentially. Marco Rubio has recently said himself that these negotiations have not been effective. Nothing has been really reached. There are also things that Russia can start doing in good faith to show that it's ready to negotiate fair peace, like letting go of civilians that have been in Russian prisons for years now, that Russia kidnapped from the occupied territories, letting go of deported children that Russia holds and not discloses their names, their addresses, and the volunteers have to use OSINT techniques to find them. Russia does not do that, and throughout history, it's been proven that Russia only abides by some rules when it's pressured to do so. And experts on Russia say that it will only come to the negotiating table if it concludes that the fighting is incredibly and increasingly costly for it. So that's what Ukraine is trying to do. Ukraine is trying to make a price of this war for Russia unbearable, unpayable, so that Russia understands that fighting longer is not an option anymore, and they have to come to the negotiation table and they have to find a middle ground, because so far within this negotiating process, Russia has not lifted off its maximalist demands, which is not only Ukrainian territories that Russia has not conquered, but also political influence over Ukraine, whether Ukrainians in these negotiations want to end this war once and for all and know that there is no risk of it igniting 5-10 years later.
Maria, finally, is there any end game in sight at this point? And if there is, what are those chess moves, that sequence of circumstances that could take us to it?
There is, and the way to end this war is to pressure Russia to do so. Russia is the only party who can end this war because it started it and it continues it every day by killing Ukrainian civilians deliberately and committing war crimes. In order to stop Russia, the world has to put pressure on Russia, and that's what Ukraine is waiting from its partners. Ukraine is waiting from the United States to take some action, to understand and finally recognize that appeasing Russia does not work. It's a failure tactic, and the United States have the leverage to pressure Russia enough to the negotiating table by imposing sanctions, by taking the frozen Russian assets and putting that funds towards the reconstruction of Ukraine, by imposing accountability on Russian war crimes, so that Russia understands that this is not a normal thing to do. There have to be consequences to these actions. So right now, we also see that Congress, especially House of Representatives today, has an important vote, maybe on passing the Ukraine Support Act for additional help to Ukraine. Ukraine is also asking from the United States for additional Patriot missiles, because this is the key to save civilians, and the United States has this key to save lives, essentially. And Ukraine and President Zelenskyy has written a letter to the American Congress and President Donald Trump to provide more Patriot missiles to save life. So given Russia, what Russia wants will not work, because we have seen that already throughout history in Chechnya, in Georgia, in Syria. When Russia doesn't have accountability, Russian appetite grows. And Russia has been saying this openly and publicly, that they want the part of the Baltic states, they want the part of Polish territories, they want more. They want essentially to reignite the old Russian Empire or Soviet Union, and they want to spread their influence further. So appeasing Russia and giving Russia something that Russia wants is not a strategy that will work out well for not just for Ukraine, but for the rest of the world too.
Maria, thank you for your analysis. Great to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at how cyber attacks are becoming a national security threat, from hospitals to energy networks. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back to Primetime. Now, cybersecurity is no longer just an IT concern. It's now part of a national defense. In Baku, the 4th National Cybersecurity Forum is focusing on how Azerbaijan can strengthen critical infrastructure, reduce foreign dependence, and build the next generation of cyber talent.
The 4th National Cybersecurity Forum is officially underway here in Baku, co-hosted by local cybersecurity association and the State Security Service. Right now, the venue is packed with a heavy lineup, everyone from government officials and lawmakers to global tech leaders. The big talking point on the floor today is building a united defense grid.
Together, again, the e-governance academy, together with our companies, they have arranged, for example, cyber arranged exercises here in Azerbaijan, cooperated in that field, and also this kind of different kind of conferences in the cyber skills. Last year was arranged together Estonian and Azerbaijan, and the other country, Ukraine, Moldova, was arranged, for example, cybersecurity conference, especially for the women.
Panel discussions are tackling real-world strategies, scaling up cyber defense, shielding critical infrastructure, and managing AI-driven risks.
Hundreds of thousands of attacks occur daily, and this is actually just the visible side of the process. In the unseen part of the iceberg, the number of attacks is many times higher. This is precisely why special attention is paid to international cooperation at the forum. Through international cooperation, it is possible to act more effectively in preventing cyber attacks originating from foreign countries. We must also increase the number of local products and services to reduce dependence on foreign IT solutions. This is one of the crucial steps towards strengthening the country's technological independence in the future.
But it's not just about speech today. The local associations have just signed a multilateral cooperation deal with cybersecurity bodies from Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova.
As you know, Huawei Azerbaijan has been built up and rooted in this country for more than 2 decades, and we know, and also we have the experience and capability from international basis. So I think think our contribution can be from the international experience, standard, security capability, and product, and as well as we integrate our international expertise into the local talents and help Azerbaijan to build up the cybersecurity talents.
Forum is also keeping its focus on the next generation, launching new cyber ward project to boost local talent and setting up open Q&A sessions between students and industry leaders.
Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this is Guillermo Pineda, an independent cyber security consultant. Guillermo, great to have you in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. Fascinating issue this, isn't it? Because of course cyber security way back used to just be something that kind of the IT department worried about. Now it is a national security issue. Everybody seems to be concerned about it. How much has the sort of threat landscape changed?
Well, Guy, first, thank you for the invitation. And I want to say that cybersecurity has become a concern because today everyone is connected to the internet. In the past, it used to be something like big companies used to do, and also businesses. For example, we cannot live without our cell phone a day. It will be very difficult. And also, if you need to buy something, you use your phone. If you need to check your bank account, you use your phone. So everything is done with the phone today. So attackers, they do that. And I want to ask you a very personal question. Do you have an antivirus in your cell phone?
Do you know, I don't even know, Guillermo, which shows that I need to put more effort into this, yeah.
Exactly, that's the point. Today we use the cell phone for everything. It holds our personal data, even our secrets, let's call it like that. And we don't even protect them as we protect our computers or nothing. I mean, they are just right there waiting for the attacker to give you an interesting experience.
Wow, and it's a huge sort of world of possibility and risk, isn't it? Because of course, as you say, we're all now online, seemingly all the time. We've seen cyber attacks, haven't we, target hospitals, energy networks, governments themselves. How prepared are we as a society for that sort of threat?
Well, I would love to say that we are well prepared for that, but reality shows that it's not like that. Why? Because in most of the cases that we have seen everywhere, and also for most of the threats, not only cyber threats, we only respond to them when they are actually happening. For example, in 2017, there was nothing regarding to ransomware. Today, ransomware, everyone knows about ransomware, what is it and how complicated it is, and we have several tools. But before that, before WannaCry, there was nothing. But the ransomware was demonstrated in the 80s. So we spent like 40, 50 years knowing that that was a threat, but no one was doing nothing about that. So today, it's still the same. Until we have a major problem, we're going to respond to that. Even if we know today that that's going to be a problem, if the problem is not materialized, we are not doing nothing.
I suppose it's like a road, isn't it? It's awful, but there sort of has to be a terrible accident before the authorities will then make the road safer. Very, very tricky situation for authorities to be in. Everybody, of course, is talking about artificial intelligence at the moment. How is AI changing this game? Is AI making it harder for the hackers or harder for those of us who are trying to defend and protect ourselves?
Well, with that question, I would love to say that please do not fear the AI. It's something that is here to stay. So every company, every organization, every person, every individual, they start getting ready to use it everywhere because the future of technology is AI. It's like internet. One day appear and now we cannot live without it. It's going to be exactly the same with AI. So we cannot just put it aside because we fear it. So in that order of ideas, the first thing that is sell is the problematic, the how we can use this for evil purposes. So today we see that the AI is winning the battle or is getting ahead. So in the offensive perspective. So the defenders, they are like, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to be left behind. So let's introduce this a little bit more. And also some industries, they are like, no, don't use AI. No, I'm not comfortable with that. So they are, getting behind the offensive part. The offensive teams, they are like, using it every time more and more. So the defenders are, leaving a little bit behind. But the idea, and what I'm trying to do here, is to tell everyone, people, please use AI, learn how to use it, learn what you can do with it, and of course, learn how to use it to defend yourself and your infrastructures as well.
And of course, the internet isn't constrained to one particular country. The whole world is online. Hackers, I'm sure, don't respect national borders. How important then is international cooperation in this fight?
It's 100% important. I will give you an example. We have a group of cyber criminals for any country, but they operate in, for example, in Brazil, but they attack a bank that is a Swiss bank, but they were captured here in Azerbaijan. Who prosecute them? What crime will be? It's a little bit tricky when you see it like that way. Something really important is some years ago there was an agreement between different countries in Budapest regarding to that cybersecurity crime. And you know what? Azerbaijan is part of that convention. So they sign it and they say, we're going to help to prosecute cyber criminals. It doesn't matter where they are operating, where they are. If we have information, we're going to share it. So it's quite important because that's making these kind of crimes international, and we can fight them back and prosecute them everywhere. It's going to be like, actually it's being used several cases, several times, and it's quite useful.
And finally, Guillermo, I'm obviously going to go away with your advice, your correct admonishment about checking my phone thoroughly tonight. Other than that, what are the big things at the moment? Because we know trends change all the time. What are the big things at the moment that are keeping you awake at night?
Well, from the technical perspective, I have two. One is technical and the other one is not technical. The non-technical, the first one, will be that people think that cyber attacks are for other people or for big companies, very complicated stuff. It's not. Actually, you and I, we can be victims. And we don't know. At this moment, we can be under an attack, and we don't know until it's very late. That's the very big issue with cybersecurity, that you don't notice it until it's very late. And the second part, the technical part, will be the threats that we have today. We know how to deal with them because it's a program. It's a sequence of steps that we can identify, we can, understand. But in the future, in the near future, AI is going to power those threats and make malware to become something that will change in real time. So you have a type of malware that attacks you, then the second one is going to be totally different and is going to evolve. We call that polymorphic or metamorphic malware that is changing all the time. How you can defend from something that is changing all the time?
The cat and mouse game continues. It just gets faster and faster.
Exactly.
Fascinating stuff. Guillermo, could speak to you all night. We have to move on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a closer look at why Britain's Foreign Secretary is in India and what the visit says about London's ambitions in a changing world. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note. To this. I'm here. Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 28th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port Aiu.
Welcome back to Primetime. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during her first official visit to New Delhi. Well, the trip comes as Britain and India look to strengthen ties against a difficult global backdrop, with London also pushing ahead with the implementation of a new free trade agreement. Rebecca Bundan has more from Mumbai.
Well, Guy, Yvette Cooper's visit comes as India and the UK are both facing economic challenges from the Middle East conflict, which is impacting oil prices and shipping routes. In discussions with India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, the focus was really on closer collaboration between the two countries to try to minimize the economic impact of international disruptions, not just from the Iran war, but also the Russia-Ukraine conflict and global trade uncertainty. Cooper's visit comes just after she was in China, and it also comes as the UK and India are trying to push through the implementation of a free trade agreement that they signed last year that aims to boost bilateral trade and improve market access for sectors, including the UK's car industry and India's textile sector. But it has been facing some challenges in the final stages leading up to its implementation. India has raised concerns about the UK's new restrictions on steel imports, and that could pose to be a hurdle. But both sides, however, have said that they are fully committed to trying to put this free trade agreement into effect as soon as possible. And in fact, Peter Kyle, who's the British Trade Secretary, was in New Delhi just earlier this week trying to advance that process, and Cooper's visit builds on that, with the UK describing India as a top priority partner. Beyond trade, technology and innovation, defence and security, climate and education, and critical minerals are other areas that the UK and India have identified for further collaboration.
Well, joining me now is Devasha Pant, a geopolitical analyst specialising in South Asia and international affairs. Devasha, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on Primetime tonight. Two countries having a really tough time economically at the moment. Yvette Cooper in India now. What does this visit tell us, do you think, about Britain's priorities at a time of global instability?
Well, Guy, I see this visit has two primary objectives. Cooper is here to do a formal review of the UK-India Vision 2035 roadmap with Foreign Minister Jaishankar, and to push the landmark free trade agreement towards coming into force as quickly as possible. Business and Trade Secretary Peter Kyle was actually in India earlier this same week on exact that FTA mission. So you have two senior cabinet ministers in India within days of each other. But beyond the trade agenda, Cooper is also here to discuss the Strait of Hormuz situation, while oil prices have spiked sharply following the US-Israeli conflict with Iran, as well as Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. Now, To understand the full context here, the groundwork for the visit was laid deliberately. Modi visited London in July 2025. The FTA was signed. The Vision 2035 was launched, a 10-year roadmap spanning trade, technology, defense, climate, and education. Then Starmer led the largest British government trade mission to India in October 2025. A 2-day visit with 125 UK CEOs, university vice chancellors, and cultural leaders. And that single trip unlocked about 10,000 new jobs in UK and secured 1.3 billion pounds of Indian investment into Britain. And now Cooper is here for the strategic review. And post-Brexit, Britain has lost its gravitational pull of the European single market, and India, the world's fastest growing major economy in the G20, has become central to Britain's ambition to reframe itself globally. And the House of Commons themselves have described this FTA UK's most economically significant bilateral agreement since leaving the EU.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that Britain bet big on a country that's now really struggling economically. But anyway, the UK's long described India, hasn't it, as a strategic partner. But from New Delhi's perspective, how important is Britain in today's increasingly competitive world?
Well, this is genuinely important, but within a much larger picture. In the trade terms, the UK was India's 14th largest trading partner going into this relationship. So Britain right now does not sit at the top of New Delhi's economic hierarchy. The United States, China, and the Gulf carry more weight there. But what Britain has been offering is a different character, and that's what makes this interesting, because you have this deep institutional familiarity, a shared legal tradition, the Commonwealth framework, and a strong Indian diaspora embedded at the highest level of British public life. And you have technology collaboration through the Technology Security Initiative under the Vision 2035. And you have British universities also opening campuses on the Indian soil. Whereas on the defense side, ties have been deepened through the new 10-year defense industrial partnership with upgraded cooperation on counterterrorism, serious organized crime, and the emerging threats. And crucially, Jai Shankar himself called 2025 as an exceptional year for India-UK cooperation. However, here's also a structural reality. India under Modi's practice, they call themselves a strategic autonomy, where New Delhi does not subordinate itself into any single partner. Britain sits alongside US, Japan, France, Australia, and the Gulf in a very carefully diversified network. So yes, the relationship between UK and India is real, it is growing, and it is valued. However, India is not betting everything on it, and currently, Britain should not mistake this enthusiasm for exclusivity.
And China, of course, always there looming in the background. Yvette Cooper, she went to China first, didn't she? Then she went to India. How difficult is it for London to deepen relations, do you think, with both countries when tensions between Beijing and New Delhi still remain so significant?
Yes, so this is genuinely difficult, and I think the sequencing of this trip makes it visible. Cooper has spent 3 days in Beijing, meeting Wang Yi, the vice president, and visited Shenzhen. And this came from the wake of Starmer's visit to China in January 2026, his first prime minister and the first British prime minister to go to Beijing in 8 long years, where both sides have hailed rest in ties and pledged cooperation for trade, investment, and technology. And from Beijing's perspective, that's a significant win. However, from New Delhi's perspective, it is something to watch very carefully, because right now, India-China tensions, while they have softened on the surface, they haven't been resolved yet. And now Britain's argument is that it can hold both relationships simultaneously, that engaging China on trade and climate does not contradict deepening security ties in India. But we can see that India will be watching very carefully what Britain actually concedes to Beijing, particularly on the technology axis and the investment. And the British analysts have noted that India's position as a partner is complex, and that UK's engagement strategy has to carefully navigate India's own nuanced ties with China.
I'm just thinking, Devasha, if your objective was solely about economic growth, if you were just looking for trade, would India really be the place you'd go to? I mean, do you think this visit is really about trade and investment, or is this more about Britain trying to establish itself as a more influential security diplomatic partner in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because I believe I'd like to push back on the idea that right now you cannot separate between these two, because in 2026 this distinction has largely collapsed. And look at what Cooper is actually doing here. She is discussing the freedom of navigation at the Strait of Hormuz, the Technology Security Initiative, AI and health technology, alongside meetings with the entrepreneurs and the academic. So it deliberately signals that Britain is trying to embed itself across every dimension of the relationship. And Britain's 2025 Strategic Defense Review explicitly states that the Indo-Pacific is strategically important as a global economic and political powerhouse and an arena of increasing geopolitical tension. So what's really happening here is this. Britain is trying to rise above its post-Brexit weight by attaching itself to India's rising strategic profile. The trade deal is the foundation. It creates the political economic incentive, but the long game is positioning Britain as an indispensable partner in the Indo-Pacific emerging security architecture. Well, whether Britain has the sustained capacity to deliver on that ambition, now that could still be an open question.
And finally, one area where both Britain and India do not see eye to eye, in fact they seem to be miles apart, is the subject of Russia. How have the parties dealt with that, or has it just sort of been skillfully avoided so far in discussions?
Well, so this is a structurally complicated fault line in the relationship they have established, and I do not see a clean resolution to it, and I believe that both sides know that. India's trade with Russia has gone from $10 billion before the pandemic to $69 billion in the last fiscal year, and more than a third of India's oil imports come from Russia, and over 60% of India's existing military inventory is Russia-made. That includes most of its air defense system, fighter jets, and missiles. And this is not a dependency you dismantle because a Western partner asks you to. Even Putin, during the visit to New Delhi in December 2025, India's foreign secretary said that the government's priority was securing energy for its 1.4 billion people, and declined to specify any position on Russian oil sanction. And this tells you exactly where India stands. And Modi has been framing, and he has consistently framed this. He's been saying India is not neutral. India has sides, and that side is of peace. And that carefully constructed language is not pro-Russia, but it's definitely not pro-sanctions either. And that is what I call strategic positioning. So the Russia-Ukraine war is explicitly on the agenda of Cooper's talk with Jaishankar today. So London isn't avoiding this subject either. But what Britain has essentially done is adapt to its expectations. It no longer demands the India to join the Western sanctions, but the working calculation in London appears to be that India values as a democratic counterweight to China and a £25 billion trade partner as a security anchor in the Indo-Pacific, and this outweighs the disagreement on Russia. And quite frankly, that's possibly the right call right now, because both countries agree on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, and they diverge on the means of defending it. And the gap is real. It will be creating frictions, and it even was raised publicly when Starmer met Modi in Mumbai in October. But both sides have demonstrated they're willing to manage it rather than let it define this relationship. And I believe this is what a mature strategic partnership looks like.
Devasha, we always value your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us again tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us. A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Turkey is looking beyond sea lanes and towards a new overland map of regional trade. From the Gulf to the Caucasus, Ankara is pushing transport corridors that could strengthen its role as a key gateway between Asia, Europe and the wider region. Here are the details from Adam Morrow.
Turkey is laying out an increasingly expansive vision for regional connectivity, with Transport Minister Abdulkadir Uralolu unveiling plans that stretch from the Gulf to the Caucasus. Speaking to state media on Wednesday, Uralolu said Ankara intends to modernize the historic Hejaz Railway and extend it southward to Oman, creating what he described as an alternative transportation route to the Strait of Hormuz. The original Hejaz Railway, built during the Ottoman era in the early 20th century, connected Damascus with Medina and was designed to facilitate travel and trade across the region. Uralolu said the scheme was part of a broader effort to strengthen overland connectivity at a time when maritime routes, particularly around the Gulf, face growing geopolitical uncertainty. He also announced that the design phase of the development road project had been completed. That initiative aims to create a roughly 1,200-kilometer transport corridor linking Iraq's southern city of Basra with the Turkish border through a network of railways, highways, and logistics hubs. Ankara views the project as a strategic alternative to traditional maritime trade routes and as a means of increasing trade flows between Asia, the Gulf, and Europe. The transport minister also highlighted progress on the Zangezur corridor, which would link mainland Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan exclave via Armenia before continuing into eastern Turkey. According to Uralolu, construction has already begun on the 224-kilometer Kars-Idir-Arlik-Diliju railway line, which forms part of Turkey's section of the route. Together, the projects reflect Ankara's broader ambition to position Turkey as a central transport and logistics gateway linking Europe, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and the Gulf. They also reflect mounting concern about the security of regional transit routes, which President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has described as an issue of national security amid ongoing geopolitical tensions across the wider region. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
From Azerbaijan, where rail connections continue to facilitate trade across the region, another transit shipment is making its way through the country's transport network. Rakaya Bashamak has more.
I'm speaking to you today from Belajari station, where another transit shipment from Russia to Armenia was sent through Azerbaijan. The cargo includes 3 railway wagons carrying wheat, 2 wagons loaded with barley, and 1 wagon transporting fertilizer. In total, the shipment carries 210 tons of wheat, 140 tons of barley, and 69 tons of fertilizer. This shipment is part of a railway road that was recently reopened after being inactive for decades. The first train traveled from Russia to Armenia through Azerbaijan was in November 2025, which brought train traffic back to the road for the first time since the 1990s. According to Azerbaijan Railways, so far more than 29,000 tons of grains, over 6,000 tons of fertilizer, 133 tons of aluminium, and 68 tons of buckwheat have been transported from Russia to Armenia via Azerbaijan's transit corridor. From Belajari station, this was Ruqayya Bashamah, A News.
Afghanistan and Uzbekistan are trying to turn regional proximity into practical trade. In Temez, officials are focusing on transport, customs and logistics links that could make it easier for Afghan businesses to reach wider markets. Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Afghanistan and Uzbekistan are looking to strengthen trade, transport and economic cooperation. Sayyid Karim Hashimi, the chairman of the Afghanistan Chamber of Commerce and Investment, met with the chairman of Uzbekistan's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. During the meeting, both sides discussed boosting trade, improving transit and customs facilitation. According to the Afghanistan Chamber of Commerce and Investment, the two sides also spoke about challenges facing traders and the need for practical solutions. Later, Hashimi also held talks with Uzbekistan's Minister of Transport and Railways. That meeting focused on transit facilities, transport cooperation, logistics infrastructure, and measures to support Afghan traders and exporters. The Afghan delegation has travelled to Uzbekistan to attend the second Termiz International Conference and is expected to hold several business meetings on the sidelines of the event. Officials from the chamber say continued cooperation with Uzbekistan is important for boosting bilateral trade, improving regional connectivity and strengthening economic relations between the two countries. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Tensions between Iran and the United States are escalating again, with both sides trading accusations and military claims around the Gulf. But while Tehran says it is acting in self-defense, diplomatic channels with Washington appear to remain open. Turaj Shirililo filed this earlier.
Iran's foreign ministry has strongly condemned the U.S. attacks on an Iranian tanker and a telecommunication tower on the Qeshm Island in the Persian Gulf, defending Tehran's retaliatory response in self-defense. In a statement on Wednesday, the ministry said Iran will use all its might to counter aggressive acts, including by targeting the origin and source of attacks, in a bid to exercise its inherent right to defend Iran's territorial integrity and national sovereignty. In the latest exchange of attacks between Iranian and U.S. militaries, Iran's Navy said it targeted a U.S. warship carrying out command and control of the strikes on the Iranian assets late on Wednesday in the Sea of Oman. According to the local media, the Navy said that following the violation of Iran's regulations for transit across the Strait of Hormuz and the U.S. attacks on the Iranian commercial vessels, it targeted a command and control site aboard a warship in the Sea of Oman. Meantime, the Revolutionary Guard's IRGC spokesman, 2nd Brigadier General Hossein Mohebbi, said in a statement that its airspace force did not strike at the Kuwait airport, saying the destruction was caused by a failed U.S. Patriot missile. In a statement carried by the Sepah News website, the general said the destruction at the airport was caused by an error in the U.S. Patriot missiles, which landed on the terminal after failing to intercept Iranian projectiles. Meantime, at the diplomatic front, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in an interview with Al Mayadeen Satellite TV, confirmed that the mediated exchanges between Tehran and Washington are continuing, but without a tangible progress in the ceasefire talks. Turaj Shirililo, reporting from Tehran for A News.
More on this, and US-Iran talks may be moving, but the Gulf is not getting calmer. President Trump says a deal could come within days, while Tehran insists there has been no breakthrough, as fresh strikes, denials and rising regional tensions test an already fragile ceasefire.
Is it possible to get to a deal with Iran?
US President Donald Trump says talks with Iran could produce progress within days. But Tehran says there has been no breakthrough as renewed fighting in the Gulf strains a fragile ceasefire.
This is, as you probably have been
Speaking on Wednesday, Trump said negotiations were going very well and suggested a deal could come as soon as the weekend.
The negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well.
Mr. President,
it could happen. I mean, if it happens, and it might not happen, who knows? But if it happens, it could happen like over the weekend.
Trump said Washington expected to secure Iran's enriched uranium stockpile under any deal and wanted to avoid putting US personnel at risk. Previously, on Tuesday, he also said that indirect talks were still going on continuously, denying Iranian state media reports that Tehran had suspended negotiations over Israel's war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, while adding that Iran's supreme leader remained involved in the talks and was still giving final approval. Asked whether he would meet him, Trump said they would probably meet at some point. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi gave a more cautious view on Wednesday, saying there had been no tangible progress, though communication channels remained open. The uncertainty comes as Gulf hostilities flare again. Kuwait said on Wednesday that an Iranian missile and drone attack hit Kuwait International Airport, killing one person and injuring more than 60 others. Flights were suspended after the attack damaged airport facilities and diplomatic missions. Kuwaiti authorities released footage they said showed an Iranian drone crashing into the airport. Iran's Revolutionary Guards denied targeting the airport and blamed the damage on failed US interceptor missiles. The US military rejected that account and said Iranian drones deliberately targeted the airport. The US military also carried out strikes near the Strait of Hormuz on Wednesday, where tensions have disrupted shipping and pushed oil prices higher. In a post on X, Araghchi said Iran's armed forces were carrying out self-defense strikes and warned that any hostile act would draw an immediate, decisive response.
And finally tonight, Kazakhstan is looking west across the Caspian and now towards the Mediterranean. By inviting Cyprus into the middle corridor conversation, Astana is trying to turn transport diplomacy into a wider bridge between Central Asia and Europe. Fariza Kalamazina has the latest.
Kazakhstan has invited Cyprus to take part in the development of the Trans-Caspian international transport route. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev made the proposal following talks with the Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis in Astana. Kazakhstan sees Cyprus, a major maritime hub in the region, as a potential partner in strengthening the so-called Middle Corridor by connecting Kazakhstan's overland transport network with the Mediterranean shipping routes. Officials say the move could open new trade opportunities linking Central Asia, the Caspian region and Europe. The visit is already being described as historic. It marks the first official visit by a president of Cyprus to Kazakhstan since diplomatic ties between the two countries were established. Following the talks, both leaders signaled the plans to deepen political and economic cooperation. President Tokayev described Cyprus as one of Kazakhstan's reliable and important partners in Europe, noting that bilateral ties have expanded in recent years through growing diplomatic and business engagement. He also called it symbolic that the first direct flight between the two countries was launched during the Cypriot president's first visit to Astana. Economic cooperation was high on the agenda. The two sides discussed expanding trade, increasing investment and strengthening business ties. Tokayev proposed the roadmap for economic cooperation through 2028 and put forward plans for an intergovernmental commission and the joint business council. And according to the Kazakh presidency, more than 400 companies with the Cypriot capital are currently operating in Kazakhstan, with around 30 registered at the Astana International Financial Center. The visit concluded with the signing of 5 intergovernmental memorandums and agreements. Fariza Kalimurzyna, Almaty, A News.
Well, that brings us to the end of Prime Time tonight. Andy Mioch will be back with you tomorrow with plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.